Mommy hasn't eaten since yesterday. Do you throw this away? The boy's voice cut through the warm, crowded bakery just days before Christmas, small hands clutching a paper bag as carols played too loudly from a cracked speaker. Conversations froze. A few customers looked away. Behind him, his mother stood rigid, shame written across her face. And then, without warning, everything collapsed into chaos. Near the counter, a little girl, no older than 4, staggered, her cheeks pale, her eyes unfocused, her body suddenly going limp. Trays rattled. Someone shouted for help. Chairs scraped the floor. The man beside her, tall, well-dressed, clearly out of place in that modest bakery, caught her just in time, panic breaking through his controlled expression. He was her father. A single dad. A CEO who could buy the entire block without blinking. Yet, in that moment, money meant nothing. As the girl struggled to breathe, the boy dropped the bag and ran forward, fearlessly pushing through adults twice his size. "She needs to sit now," he said, voice shaking but firm, repeating words he'd learned the hard way. The bakery fell silent again, this time not from discomfort, but from shock. Outside, Christmas lights blinked through the window, indifferent to the crisis unfolding inside. The smell of fresh bread mixed with fear, the promise of celebration clashing violently with reality. No one noticed the stale loaf anymore. No one remembered the boy had asked for discarded food. All eyes were locked on 2 children from different worlds, colliding in a moment that would tie 4 lives together forever, and turn an ordinary Christmas week into something none of them would ever forget. The boy was only 6, but there was nothing childish in his eyes when he looked at the girl on the floor. He had seen this before, too many times. His mother had collapsed just like this in tiny apartments and bus stops, always saying she was fine until she wasn't. He knelt beside the girl without asking permission, ignoring the murmurs around him. "She's dizzy. She needs air," he said quickly, his small hands steady as he guided the father to lower her carefully. The man hesitated for half a second, then obeyed. The boy spoke again, faster now, telling him to loosen her coat, to keep her awake, to talk to her, not to let her close her eyes. The little girl whimpered, confused, her head resting against her father's arm. "Stay with me," the boy urged her, gently tapping her cheek the way he had done with his mom. "What's your name?" The father answered for her, his voice tight with fear, watching this child command the room with knowledge born from hardship. Someone called an ambulance. Someone else opened the door, letting cold December air rush inside. The boy never moved. He counted her breaths under his breath, whispering encouragement like it was second nature. In those seconds, the CEO saw something crack open inside himself. He was used to boardrooms, pressure, decisions that moved markets, but he had never felt so powerless or so grateful. This child, who moments ago had been asking for discarded bread, was now holding his world together. When the sirens finally echoed in the distance, the girl squeezed her father's finger and opened her eyes again. Relief flooded the room. The CO exhaled for the first time since it started. He looked at the boy, really looked at him, and understood something irreversible had just happened. In a matter of seconds, a hungry child had become the reason his daughter was still breathing. And from that moment on, nothing about this Christmas or their lives could remain the same. The ambulance arrived with lights cutting through the early winter darkness, red and blue flashing against Christmas decorations still hanging in the bakery window. The CO lifted his daughter into the paramedic's arms, hands shaking despite his calm voice. The boy climbed in without being asked, eyes fixed on the girl, while his mother hesitated, until the CO turned and said, firmly, "Please, come with us." Inside the ambulance, the space felt too small for the fear it carried. The little girl lay strapped to the stretcher, oxygen mask fogging with each breath. The boy sat close, explaining everything he'd seen, every sign he recognized. The paramedic listened carefully. The CEO watched, stunned, realizing this child was the most composed person there. At the hospital, time stretched cruelly. Bright lights, antiseptic smell, rushed footsteps. The CEO refused to let the boy out of his sight, even when nurses tried to separate them. "He stays," he said, voice low but unmovable. The mother stood beside her son, clutching her coat, whispering prayers she wasn't sure anyone still heard. Hours blurred into minutes, and minutes into nothing. The CEO made calls he barely remembered making, canceled meetings that suddenly felt ridiculous. He noticed the boy hadn't eaten. He noticed the mother's hands trembling from cold and exhaustion. Without asking, he brought them both hot tea from a vending machine, setting it gently in front of them. When the doctor finally came out, relief hit like a physical wave. The girl would be fine. Dehydration, exhaustion, nothing permanent. The CEO closed his eyes, breathing deeply, one hand gripping the edge of the chair. The boy smiled for the first time, a small, tired smile that carried far too much responsibility for someone his age. They sat together in the quiet aftermath, the hospital strangely calm. That's when the CEO learned the boy's age, 6. That's when he learned there was no father. That's when he learned they had no one waiting for them at home. The mother said it simply, without complaint. "It's just us. Always is." Christmas came up accidentally, mentioned by a nurse wishing them well. The mother nodded politely, then looked away. They had no plans. No family dinners. No tree. The CEO felt the weight of that admission settle heavily in his chest, sharper than any business failure he'd ever faced. He looked at his daughter sleeping peacefully, then at the boy sitting straight-backed, still alert, as if danger might return at any moment. 2 children. 2 fragile worlds. And somehow, tonight, they had collided for a reason that felt bigger than coincidence. The CEO finally spoke, not as an executive, not as a man used to control, but as a father. "I can't just leave," he said quietly. The mother met his eyes, wary but listening. In that moment, urgency replaced politeness. This wasn't about charity. It was about something unfinished. Outside, snow began to fall softly, unnoticed by most of the city. Inside the hospital, for lives hovered at the edge of a decision none of them yet understood, one that would pull them together far faster than any of them were prepared for. They were discharged close to midnight, the hospital corridors nearly empty, holiday wreaths drooping from doors no one had time to admire. Rain hammered the pavement outside, cold and relentless, washing the city into a blur of reflections. The CEO looked at the boy and his mother standing under the awning, clearly unsure which direction to go, and didn't hesitate. "Let me take you home," he said. It wasn't framed as charity. It was said like a fact. The mother paused only a second before nodding. The parking lot was almost deserted, the kind of quiet that only came when everyone else was already home for Christmas. The CEO helped the children into the back seat, buckling them carefully. Within minutes, exhaustion won. The little girl's head slumped against the boy's shoulder, and he adjusted himself instinctively to keep her comfortable. Soon, both were asleep, breath slow and even. The car pulled onto the wet streets, windshield wipers beating a steady rhythm. Christmas lights reflected on the asphalt, stretched and broken by the rain. For a while, no one spoke. The silence wasn't awkward. It was heavy, full of things that didn't need decoration. "She's my whole world," the CEO said finally, eyes fixed on the road. "Her mother died when she was born." He didn't add more. He didn't need to. The mother nodded once. "It's just me and him," she replied quietly. "I didn't plan it this way. I just stayed." The words were flat, honest, stripped of self-pity. They talked like that. Short sentences, no dramatics. He mentioned working too much. She mentioned losing her job when her son got sick. He said money solved problems but created others. She said dignity mattered more than comfort. Neither tried to impress the other. They were too tired for that. At a red light, the CO glanced in the rearview mirror. His daughter's hand had curled around the boy's sleeve in her sleep. The sight hit him harder than the hospital scare. Something about it felt wrong and right at the same time. The rain intensified, drumming against the roof. The mother gave directions, leading them through darker streets, away from the decorated avenues. The CO realized how far apart their worlds usually were, and how thin that distance felt tonight. "You didn't have to stay," she said suddenly. "Most people wouldn't." He shrugged slightly. "I couldn't leave," he answered. It was the truth, simple and unpolished. They pulled up in front of a small building, lights off in most windows. The mother hesitated again, looking back at the sleeping children. "Thank you," she said, meaning more than the words could carry. The CO nodded, but didn't move to unlock the doors yet. Because as he sat there, engine idling in the rain, he realized this night wasn't ending at the curb, and whatever came next would demand more than a ride home. The building was old, its hallway lights flickering as they climbed the narrow stairs. The CO carried his daughter carefully, keeping her close to his chest, while the boy led the way, already familiar with every crack in the steps. The mother unlocked the door quietly, as if afraid of waking the walls themselves. Inside, the apartment was small but meticulously clean. A single couch, a tiny table, a thin Christmas decoration taped near the window. No tree. No presents. Just warmth created through effort, not abundance. The CO stepped inside and immediately understood what kind of strength lived here. The boy took a blanket from the couch without being told and spread it on the floor so the little girl could rest more comfortably. The mother watched him with a mix of pride and exhaustion. "He learned early," she said softly. The CO nodded, unsure what to say. He set his daughter down gently, checking her breathing one more time. She stirred, then settled again, still holding the boy's sleeve. That small detail hit him harder than any statistic ever could. 2 children finding comfort where adults had failed. The mother offered water. He declined, looking around instead, at the worn furniture, the neatly folded clothes, the careful order imposed on scarcity. "You shouldn't have to live like this," he said before he could stop himself. The moment the words left his mouth, he regretted them. At a red light, the CO glanced in the rearview mirror. His daughter's hand had curled around the boy's sleeve in her sleep. The sight hit him harder than the hospital scare. Something about it felt wrong and right at the same time. The rain intensified, drumming against the roof. The mother gave directions, leading them through darker streets, away from the decorated avenues. The CO realized how far apart their worlds usually were, and how thin that distance felt tonight. "You didn't have to stay," she said suddenly. "Most people wouldn't." He shrugged slightly. "I couldn't leave," he answered. It was the truth, simple and unpolished. They pulled up in front of a small building, lights off in most windows. The mother hesitated again, looking back at the sleeping children. "Thank you," she said, meaning more than the words could carry. The CO nodded, but didn't move to unlock the doors yet. Because as he sat there, engine idling in the rain, he realized this night wasn't ending at the curb, and whatever came next would demand more than a ride home. They were still awake when the rain softened outside, turning into a distant whisper against the windows. The CO sat on the edge of the chair, jacket folded on his lap, as if leaving too quickly might break something fragile in the room. It was the mother who spoke first, her voice low so the children wouldn't wake. "I had a good job once," she said, staring at the small decoration on the wall. "Not great, but honest." She explained without drama how her son got sick, how hospital visits became routine, how she asked for time, and how quickly she was replaced. No warnings, no second chances, just a polite email and a locked door. I chose him, she finished simply, and the world chose to forgive me. The CEO listened in silence, the story landing harder than expected. He had signed papers like that, approved restructurings. He wondered how many lives had quietly unraveled because of decisions made in clean offices far away from rooms like this one. The boy shifted in his sleep, then suddenly sat up, rubbing his eyes. He looked at the CEO's daughter curled beside him and smiled. She's okay, he said softly, as if confirming it for himself. Then, without being asked, he added, I helped her because she helped us. The adults froze. The mother turned to him, confused. What do you mean? She asked gently. The boy shrugged, like it was obvious. Last week, she gave me coins, he said, pointing toward the sleeping girl. For warm bread. Not old bread. Mommy ate that night. He said it plainly, without pride, without accusation, just truth. The room went very still. The CEO felt his chest tighten as understanding snapped into place. His daughter hadn't just been a victim in the bakery. She had been part of this story long before tonight. The mother covered her mouth, overwhelmed. You never told me, she whispered. The boy looked at her, confused. You were tired, he replied. In that moment, everything aligned, the boy's calm under pressure, the mother's quiet endurance, the invisible kindness that had already passed between their children. The CEO realized this wasn't a coincidence at all. It was a circle closing. He looked at the mother with new clarity. This wasn't about saving anyone. This was about recognizing strength when it stood right in front of him, and understanding that the boy who saved his daughter had been raised by someone the world had discarded far too easily. The silence after the boy's words lingered, heavy but steady. The CEO stood and walked slowly toward the window, looking out at the rain-soaked street below. When he turned back, his decision was already made. You shouldn't be alone tonight, he said carefully. Neither of you should. Come stay at my house, just until things settle. The mother's answer was immediate. She shook her head, not harshly, but with certainty. I can't, she said. Not like that. Her voice didn't waver. I won't teach my son that our home can be replaced when things get hard. The CEO nodded, accepting the boundary. For a moment, it seemed like the conversation might end there. Then he tried again, but this time differently. I'm not offering you a place to stay, he said. I'm offering you work. She looked up, surprised. He explained calmly, without embellishment. He needed someone to help manage the house, meals, routines, order. A real position. A contract. Fair pay. Stability. When people work for me, he added, they live where they work. It's how I keep things simple. She hesitated. And the others? She asked, cautious. The staff? There aren't any, he replied honestly. Just one assistant, and he's with his family for Christmas. You'd be the first. He paused, then added, you'd have your own space, your rules, and the freedom to leave whenever you want. The children shifted together in their sleep, unaware of how much their future was being discussed around them. The mother looked at her son, then at the little girl beside him, and finally back at the CEO. This wasn't rescue. It was respect, offered cleanly. If I accept, she said slowly, it's because I earn it. That's the only way I'd want it, he replied. She extended her hand. He shook it, firm and deliberate. No promises beyond the present. No illusions. Just an agreement grounded in dignity. As he picked up his coat to leave, the CEO knew something had changed, not just for tonight, but for everything that would follow. And outside, the rain finally stopped, as if making space for what came next. She accepted the offer with a quiet breath of relief, gratitude softening her posture without bending her pride. Then, as if to keep the moment from becoming too heavy, she tilted her head and smiled, just slightly. "You know," she said, her voice light but sincere, "you don't seem like the kind of man who abandons a princess halfway through the story." The CEO laughed under his breath, surprised, and for the first time that night, the tension between them eased into something warm. "I try to be kind all year," he replied, meeting her eyes, "not just around Christmas." In the corner of the room, the children woke and found each other instantly, laughter replacing fear as the boy showed the little girl how to build a crooked tower from cushions and blankets. Their joy filled the apartment, proof that safety had returned. In that sound, the mother saw possibility. Not rescue, not dependence. Stability, dignity, a future shaped by choice. The CEO watched them, realizing that success had never felt like this, quiet, human earned. As dawn approached and Christmas lights blinked outside, the story closed where it truly mattered. Helping one another didn't erase pain, but it changed direction. It connected strangers. It turned moments into lifelines. The boy looked up and waved, the mother resting a hand on his shoulder. The little girl waved too, beaming, and the father joined them, his arm around his daughter, his eyes calm at last. Together, as one family forming in real time, they spoke the same simple wish, one born from kindness, courage, and a night that rewrote everything. Merry Christmas.